Before last night's game against the Rockets, Steph Curry had been on a tear, averaging 42 points against three really solid playoff teams. But on Sunday night, Ime Udoka came up with a great game plan, one that I think is probably the best I've seen on Curry in a very long time. With the help from Amen Thompson and a great strategy, Curry only scored 3 total points on 1 for 10 shooting. But what made the Rockets' game plan so good is that they essentially identified a few major weaknesses that the Warriors will need to figure out before the playoffs. For the longest time, the best way that teams had bothered Steph was to be as physical with him as much as possible and try to figure out how much they could get away with. And when you have one of the craziest athletes in the league, who happens to also be a Warriors hater, Amen Thompson may be as good as it gets. For most of the night, Thompson's task was to watch Curry and not look at anything else, even if that meant more space for the Warriors teammates. If the Warriors set screens, the Rockets would be willing to switch, but still apply the same concept. And yes, every single Rockets defender made sure to stay in contact with Curry at all times. Because the Warriors usually have screens everywhere, not touching Curry is an easy way to have him create separation, and that's where things usually start to spiral. For most of Curry's career, a lot of refs have let a lot of off-ball stuff go, and that's exactly what Ime Udoka had alluded to, essentially playing Curry as physical as possible and seeing if the refs could hold their ground. But with a plethora of wings in Houston, each person took turns guarding Steph, and it got hard for him to create any real separation. A lot of times, the Warriors would try and set screens, and Curry would say forget it, just go play 4-on-4. Part of the reason he chose to do this was to take the Rockets' best defender out of the game. He would park himself in the corner to give the Warriors as much space as possible, but that played right into the Rockets' hands. The most important thing the Rockets got away with was putting Fred VanVleet on the Warriors' forwards. To start the game, he was assigned to Draymond, with Thompson face guarding Curry. The Rockets dare Draymond to punish them, and he gets stripped. A few possessions later, Thompson's again face guarding Curry, so Draymond gets it in the post, and as he backs down, the savvy VanVleet pulls the chair, which gets Draymond off balance and another miss. Then 2 minutes later, VanVleet's now on Jimmy Butler, and he gets under him to stand his ground. Draymond has a smaller window to get that pass through, and it's picked off. Remember, the Warriors' entire system is built around getting Steph Curry open. Especially since the Butler trade, his presence has helped create more opportunities for Curry. However, he also doesn't have a score-first mindset. In fact, besides maybe Buddy Hield, no one on the Warriors is thinking to score first, and the Rockets tested that to the limit. This might be the most obvious example. With Curry being face guarded, Butler gets the ball with VanVleet in the middle of the floor, but he tries to run a dribble handoff with Gary Payton. He then passes it off to Draymond, who waits for something to develop, and the Rockets will live with a GP2-3 all day. And then to begin the second half, the Rockets put VanVleet on Butler again, and he goes looking for Steph. Both Amen Thompson there, Curry tries to just fire, and that's not the shot the Warriors were hoping for. What I liked the most was that the Rockets never wavered, even when the Warriors role players had scored a few times, even if those shots were close to the rim. The point is to put the others into really uncomfortable positions and see if they could beat them over and over again. And there were a few times where they had scored on multiple possessions, but they stood strong with their game plan. Part of the reason they can also get away with these cross matches is that they know the Warriors can't shoot. Again, besides Buddy Hield and maybe Brandon Podziemski, there's no one that the Rockets really need to worry about. As a result, they spend a lot of their time just zoning in the paint. Alperen Sengun did a fantastic job guarding multiple things at once. Thompson's face guarding and holding Curry, so there's no reason for him to try using that screen. Sengun's watching that, and he times his rotation perfectly on Kuminga, which seemed to surprise him. Later, Sengun starts on Moses Moody, and he actually gets a step, so Brooks comes to help. Sengun peels off to the cutting Draymond, and he gets called for an offensive foul. So you might think the best thing to do is put Sengun in the pick and roll. When they tried, they blitz hard all the way towards half court, and even though they score, remember, the Rockets will absolutely live with this. This reminds me of when Brad Stevens was still coaching, where they would use Avery Bradley and whoever to hound Curry all the way to half court, essentially using the half-court line as another defender and testing his ball security. And because of that, the shot quality on Curry's shots were very poor. When he felt a very slight opening, he would immediately take that shot. But for most of the night, the Warriors failed to really punish the extra spacing on the floor, with Curry completely taken out of the game. The main counter was to put Buddy Hield in for long minutes. Given the situation, he actually shot the ball really well. On the inbound, it looks like a triple handoff, but knowing Steph's getting doubled, he fakes that and gets into the paint before relocating to the corner for a wide open three. Basically, with Steph taken out, Buddy Hield became a pseudo Curry, and with more space, he got clean shots all night. It was able to keep the Warriors in the game in spite of Curry's poor performance. The thing that the Warriors really need to do better is to set harder screens. This was one of the few good screens that was set, and that's with Thompson holding Curry. They're still able to get downhill and an easy layup. But for most of the night, especially when it's Amen Thompson, the Warriors couldn't crack him to give Curry any sort of separation. So he has to give the ball up, and the Rockets can now go into deny mode with him out of the play. The inability to screen Thompson out meant that Curry rarely had any opportunities to move off the ball freely. Remember, it really only takes a split second of separation for Curry to all of a sudden start running, have his gravity do its work, and open up better shots. Whether or not you think this was a fluke or the Rockets got away with a lot, it's really important to give credit to Udoka. Just a few years ago, his strategy was almost the complete opposite, where he dared Curry to beat the Celtics by shooting relatively open threes. Remember that the Celtics played a drop, which is giving Curry target practice, and they lost that finals. Just a few years later, Ime drew up the complete opposite game plan, now basically daring the Warriors to beat them 4-on-4. And we'll have to see if the strategy really works in the playoffs, but big props to him for making real adjustments. And with plenty of defensive firepower on this team, the Rockets are going to be a tough team to beat in the playoffs. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, like and subscribe. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.